I buried my father on a Tuesday. The white way, clean pine box, preacher's words, hymns sung in English. I stood at the graveside next to my mother's marker and felt like a liar. 3 days had passed since then. 3 days of not sleeping, not eating, just standing here in the cemetery at dawn, staring at fresh-turned earth and knowing I'd failed them both. My name is Sarah Whitehorse, 28 years old, unmarried, living alone in my father's house on the edge of town where the respectable streets end and the wilderness begins. That's where people like me belong in the spaces between things, between white and Apache, between accepted and tolerated, between visible and invisible. My mother was full Apache. She died when I was 8. And my father, white as Sunday church, buried her with full Apache rites right here in this Christian cemetery. The town barely tolerated it. I remember standing there, tiny and confused, watching him paint symbols on her coffin while white faces stared. I thought he was the bravest man alive. 20 years later, when it was his turn, I gave him a white burial, no symbols, no songs, no sage smoke or cedar blessings, just the preacher's safe words and everyone nodding approval, and me standing there with my mother's voice, screaming in my memory, "You are enough. You are both. You are whole." But I wasn't. I was a coward. The cottonwoods whispered above me, same sound they'd made at my mother's funeral. The earth smelled rich and dark. My father's grave was raw beside my mother's weathered stone, and I'd run my fingers over her marker so many times in 20 years that the Apache symbols he'd carved were smooth as a river rock. I knew those symbols. Mother taught me some before she died. Father taught me the rest, late at night when the town couldn't see, when it was just us and memory and grief. Red ochre for earth, white clay for sky, black for the 4 directions, songs for safe journey. I'd painted none of them on my father's coffin. "I'm sorry," I whispered to both graves. "I'm so sorry." The wind didn't answer. The dead don't forgive. They just wait. I'd spent my whole life being quiet, being small. The shopkeepers served me, but didn't sit with me. The women nodded, but didn't invite me to quilting circles. The men looked through me like I was smoke. "Half-breed," they whispered. Exotic enough to be interesting, too brown to be acceptable. I'd survived by being invisible, by making myself fit into spaces that were never meant for me, by saying yes when I meant no, and smiling when I meant screaming, and burying my father the white way because keeping peace was easier than keeping faith. When had I become that woman? The one who apologized for breathing? I knew the answer. The day my mother died. The day I watched my father stand alone against the whole town and thought, I'll never be that brave. Better to bend, better to hide, better to survive. But standing there at dawn, staring at what I'd done, I realized survival wasn't living. It was just slow dying. I made a decision then. The kind that changes everything. I would dig him up. Do it right. Honor my mother's way, his way, our way. Paint the symbols, sing the songs. Give him the burial he deserved. The one that matched hers. The one that said, love doesn't follow rules. Even if I had to do it alone. Even if the town came for me. Even if I lost everything. 3 days after the funeral, I couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe. I'd betrayed them both. So I made a choice that would change my life. I would make this right, whatever it cost. He appeared at dawn on the 4th day. I saw him from my kitchen window, a figure on horseback moving across the mesa like he belonged to the wind. Paint horse, Apache-style riding, moving with that particular grace that said this man knows who he is. I knew what he was before he spoke. Apache, from the reservation, come to shame me. I was right about two of those things. He dismounted at my fence, slow and respectful, letting me see him clearly. 35, maybe. Dark hair to his shoulders. White man's shirt, but Apache bearing. Face that could have been my mother's brother, if my mother had a brother instead of sisters. Sarah Whitehorse. His voice was low, careful. Who's asking? Thomas Neshoba. Your mother was my aunt. Your father was a good man. The words hit me like stones. My mother's sister's son. Family I'd never met. Family that existed somewhere out there in a world I'd denied for 28 years. What do you want? He didn't flinch at my rudeness. Just stood there, patient as bedrock. I heard about your father. Came to offer respects. Came to help if you need it. I don't need help. The words came automatic. I'd been saying them so long they felt like prayer. I brought paint, he said. Sage, cedar, your mother's songs. Thought you might want to do it right. My throat closed. He knew. Somehow he knew what I'd done, what I'd failed to do. What was eating me alive at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come and shame did. You're 4 days late, I said, heard the anger in my voice. Knew it wasn't for him. I know. He looked at the ground. News travels slow. I came as soon as I heard. I wanted to hate him. Wanted him gone. His presence felt like judgment made flesh. Like every failure I'd ever committed standing there on a paint horse waiting for me to crack. But he wasn't judging. His eyes were kind, sad, even. Why would you care? I asked. We've been alone for 20 years. Where was all this family then? I was 12 when your mother died, he said quietly. Didn't know you existed until I was grown. By then. Your father had built walls. Kept you safe the only way he knew how. Can't fault him for that. Can't fault him. But I could fault myself. I don't need Apache charity, I said. Each word sharp as glass. I don't need anyone. You're angry at me because you're angry at yourself, he said. Not cruel. Just true. I understand. The truth of it made me furious. Made me want to scream. Made me want to cry. I did none of those things. Just stood there behind my fence, behind my walls, behind 28 years of practice at not feeling. You should go, I said. He nodded, started to turn, then stopped. When he asked, just that, one word, not if, when, like my answer was never in doubt, hoofbeats interrupted. Sheriff Mackenzie rode up, big and officious on his roan mare, looking between me and Thomas like he'd caught us plotting murder. Morning, Sarah. He didn't greet Thomas. Didn't even look at him. Heard some concerning rumors. Talk of you planning something inappropriate at the cemetery. My spine went iron. Rumors from who? Concerned citizens. This is a Christian town. Christian cemetery. Your father was buried proper. Best leave it that way. I felt Thomas beside me, silent as shadow. He didn't speak, didn't challenge the sheriff. Respected that this was my fight, my choice. My father's buried next to my mother. I said, that's where he stays. Good. Sheriff nodded, satisfied. Glad we understand each other. No trouble. Sarah, you've always been sensible. Sensible, code for quiet. For knowing my place, he rode off. Thomas and I stood in the dust, his horse kicked up. When Thomas asked again, I heard myself answer before my fear could stop me. Tonight. We didn't shake hands on it. Didn't need to. Some agreements are written in older languages than English. Thomas came back at dusk with supplies paint, herbs, tools for digging. We sat at my kitchen table making plans like we were plotting a bank robbery instead of a burial. "They'll come for you," he said, "after, when they find out. I know. Could arrest you. Disturbing a grave is illegal." "I know that too." He studied me across the table. "Why now? Why not 4 days ago when it mattered?" The question cut clean. I looked at my hands, roughened from years of work my mother never imagined I'd do. Keeping house alone. Keeping myself alive. Keeping quiet. "I was scared," I said. Simple truth. Thought if I was quiet enough, white enough, maybe they'd let me belong. Gave him a white burial to keep the peace. And it's killing me." Thomas nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. "The symbols," he said. "Which ones do you remember?" "Some, not enough. Mother died before teaching me everything. And father tried, but grief made him forgetful. And I was 8 and terrified and didn't want to remember, because remembering hurt." Thomas spread the paints on my table: red, white, black, earth, sky, directions. "This one," he traced a pattern in the air, "means connection, continuation, one generation to the next." I watched his hands move and thought these are my mother's hands. Same long fingers, same certainty. Blood moving through someone else, proving I wasn't alone. Never had been, even when it felt like the loneliest thing in the world. "Tell me about her," I said. "My mother." As a girl, his face softened. "She could outride any boy. Scared your grandfather half to death. Used to race horses bareback across the mesa, laughing the whole time, fearless." Something broke open in my chest. Laughter. First time in months. I caught myself, walls wobbling, but it felt good. Felt like breathing. "That sounds right," I said. "Father told me she was wild." "She was. Until she met your father. Then she was just wild about him." We sat in the growing dark, and he told me stories. How Mother used to sing while she cooked. How she'd braid sage into her hair. How she'd stand up to anyone. Any white man, any Apache elder, anyone who said love had rules. "I thought if I was quiet enough," I whispered, "white enough, they'd let me belong." Thomas looked at me steady. "You belong to yourself, Sarah. That's the only belonging that matters." The words settled into me like stones into riverbed. Heavy. "Right. We should go," he said. Before moon's too bright, we walked to the cemetery with shovels and certainty. Dug in darkness while the town slept. The earth came up heavy, resistant, like it didn't want to give back what it held. When we lifted my father's coffin from the ground, I broke. Not gentle tears. Years of them. Grief I'd held since I was 8. Shame I'd carried for 20 years. Sobs that bent me double over fresh earth and old bones and everything I'd lost by trying to be something I wasn't. Thomas didn't touch me, didn't speak, just kept working, kept digging, let me cry myself empty. When I could breathe again, I said, "Thank you. We're family." He said, "This is what family does." First time anyone had claimed me as family in 20 years. First time it didn't feel like pity. We carried my father into the house as dawn threatened the horizon. 3 days to prepare him. 3 days to learn the songs. 3 days before the town would discover what we'd done. I didn't know then that those 3 days would teach me more about myself than 28 years of hiding. Ever had We worked for 3 days preparing my father. Thomas taught me patience I didn't know I had. Taught me my mother's songs I'd forgotten. Taught me I could be both white and Apache without betraying either. The first day, we washed the body. Thomas showed me how, respectful and slow, treating my father like he was sleeping, not dead. We painted symbols on his skin. Red ochre for the earth that held him. White clay for the sky that called him home. Black for the 4 directions he'd travel. Each symbol had meaning. Each one, Thomas explained. Patient as sunrise. Filling in what my mother died before teaching. What my father tried to share, but grief made him stumble over. This song is for safe journey, Thomas said, his voice low and rhythmic. Your mother sang it every sunrise. I remembered then. Fragments coming back, like light through water. Her voice in the kitchen, the melody I'd buried with her. Sing it, I said. He did, and I cried again. But different tears this time. Memory tears. Coming home tears. We fell into rhythm. He'd teach. I'd learn. I'd remember. He'd confirm. The house filled with smoke from sage and cedar. Filled with words in a language I'd almost forgotten. Filled with something I didn't have a name for, but felt like belonging. He made coffee without asking how I liked it. Strong and black. He'd noticed. I cooked the way my mother did, fry bread and beans. Recipes I'd hidden from the white town. From myself, he recognized them. Told me stories about my mother making the same dishes. How the whole house would smell like home. She'd sing while she cooked. He said, even burned beans tasted like ceremony when she made them. I'd forgotten that. Forgotten her voice making everything sacred. Thomas brought it back. Brought her back. On the second day, laughter snuck in. I teased him about his horse's name. Yato Blue. That's the best you could do. Better than naming a horse. He shot back. I don't have a horse. That explains it. We both froze then, realizing what we'd done. Laughed during funeral preparation. Laughed while handling the dead. Then laughed harder, because grief and joy aren't opposites. They're neighbors. And my mother would have laughed, loudest of all. But the town was watching. I felt it every time I went outside. Smoke from my chimney at odd hours. Windows glowing past midnight. Shapes moving behind curtains. People talk in small towns. People notice. Sheriff Mackenzie rode past twice. Didn't stop but watched. Women at the store whispered when I bought supplies. That Apache man? Staying with her, improper, unseemly. They're building a case against me. I told Thomas on the 3rd night. I know. Doesn't scare you. He looked at me across the table, across my father's painted body, laid out with honor. Across 3 days of learning to be myself. I was scared of being alone, he said, not scared of standing with family. I'd forgotten what it felt like to not explain myself, to just be. His presence didn't demand I prove I was Apache enough, white enough, woman enough. I could just breathe. His hands were steady as he painted. His voice was low when he sang. I found myself listening for both, waiting for both, noticing when he moved, when he spoke, when he looked at me with those eyes that said, I see you, all of you. And none of it is shameful. When had that happened? When had I started noticing we finished the preparation on the 3rd night? Every symbol painted, every song learned. My father looked like my mother now ready for journey. Honored in death. Loved in the way that mattered. Thomas set down the paintbrush. Tomorrow at dawn, we bury him. After that, I'll go. You'll have done right by him. I should have felt relief. Mission accomplished. debt paid, move on. Instead, I felt loss, sharp and sudden as winter wind. I didn't say, don't go. Didn't say, stay. Pride still had some hold on me, but I felt it slipping. I couldn't sleep that night. Found Thomas outside watching stars, sitting on the porch like he belonged there. Like he'd always been there. Like the house had been waiting for him. I sat beside him without asking permission. First time in my life, I just sat with someone. No explaining. No performing. Just sitting. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much in my head. We watched stars for a while. The sky was huge out here, bigger than towns or rules or fear. Made me feel small. Made me feel free. Why did you really come? I asked. Truth this time. He was quiet. Then, my mother, your aunt, died 5 years ago. Made me promise to find you. Said she regretted never meeting her sister's daughter. I was late keeping that promise. His voice held grief I recognized. Loss of the person who loved you first. Loved you best. Loved you despite everything. I'm sorry, I said. Me too. He looked at me. She told me about your mother. How brave she was. How she fell in love with a white man and didn't care who it angered. How she lived her truth even when it cost her everything. It cost her her family. Not all of it. She had your father. Had you... That was enough for her. I thought about that. My mother choosing love over belonging. Choosing my father over her people. Her place. Her easy path. I'd spent 28 years doing the opposite. Choosing belonging over truth. Choosing safety over self. I'm like you, Thomas said quietly. Living between worlds. Too Christian for the traditionals. Too Apache for the whites. Lonely in both places. Alone in between. We're the same, I whispered. Yes. The recognition created something between us. A bridge made of shared exile. Shared understanding. Shared blood. I thought being invisible was survival. I said, words I'd never told anyone. Thought if I just bent enough, fit enough, apologized enough, maybe they'd let me stay. But it wasn't surviving. It was just slow dying. Thomas didn't tell me I was wrong. Didn't offer comfort. Just listened. Like my truth mattered. Your father stayed in this town for you, he said finally. So you'd have a home. So you'd be safe. That was love. You honoring him now? Giving him proper burial. That's love too. Nobody ever told me I was doing something right. I didn't know how to hold it. The night smelled like sage and smoke, like memory and possibility. Thomas's shoulder was almost touching mine. Not quite. Almost. The space between hummed. I noticed things I shouldn't notice. The way firelight caught his face. The way his voice dropped when he sang. The way his hands moved. Steady and certain and kind. I wanted to lean into him. I thought, scared myself with how much I wanted it. What happens after tomorrow? I asked. Tried to sound casual. Failed. What do you want to happen? The question sat between us, huge as the sky, heavy as all the years I'd spent alone. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Too scared. Too new at wanting. Teach me the burial song one more time. I said instead, I want to get it right. So we sang, his voice and mine, mother's words, his mother's melody. our shared blood making music in the darkness. For the first time in 20 years, I felt like I belonged somewhere, to someone, to myself. We began the ceremony at dawn, carried my father between us, wrapped in blankets woven with symbols, painted with prayers. Ready for his journey, the air was cold and clean. The sun was just breaking over the mesa, turning everything gold. At my mother's grave, we set him down, gentle. I sang the songs Thomas taught me, voice shaking but strong. My mother's songs, finally, after 20 years, singing them out loud where the whole town could hear if they wanted. Thomas added sage smoke and cedar. The smell rose up sweet and sharp, carrying prayers to wherever the dead go when they're honored. Right? I painted the final symbols on the coffin. Connection, continuation. Love that doesn't break with death. I felt my mother there. I whispered, felt my father at peace. That's when they came. Hoofbeats. 6 riders. Sheriff Mackenzie in front. Town council behind him. Faces set hard. Shovels in hand. Coming like an army for a war, they reined up at the cemetery gate. Dismounted slow. Walked toward us like judgment. Sarah Whitehorse, sheriff said. Official voice. The kind that means legal trouble. We told you no heathen practices in this cemetery. My first instinct was to fight alone. Send Thomas away. This is my trouble. My choice. My consequence. You should go. I said to Thomas. Quiet. Desperate. He didn't move. I'm not leaving you. He said, not today. Not tomorrow. Not unless you ask me to. First time in my life, someone stood with me. Not for me. With me, the difference was everything. I turned to face the 6 men. My father is buried beside my mother, Apache way. His choice, mine too. We have a court order, Council Leader Morrison said. Waved paper like it was scripture. Exhume the body. Rebury it properly. Or we arrest you for disturbing the peace. Desecrating a grave. Properly, my voice was steel. He loved my mother, despite every rule you wrote against it. He honored her in death, the way he loved her in life. That's proper. Sarah, be reasonable. Sheriff's voice softened, almost kind. Worse than anger. You were born here. You're one of us. Don't throw that away for this. One of you, I laughed. Bitter sound. I've never been one of you. You tolerated me. Difference. That's not fair. I'm done choosing, I said. Cut him off. Done picking between my mother's blood and my father's. Done pretending half of me doesn't exist to make you comfortable. This is both my worlds, right here in this grave, both my parents, both parts of me. Thomas stepped forward then, not speaking for me, just present, just there. His solidarity said, she's not alone. Apache people claim her even if you don't. You'll have to move both of us, he said, quiet as thunder. The men exchanged looks. They'd expected one woman alone, easy to intimidate, easy to control. They didn't expect this. Her conviction, his support, our refusal. That's when the preacher stepped forward. Reverend Walsh. Older man, kind eyes. He'd buried my father 4 days ago, said the safe words, kept the peace. Sheriff, he said, maybe. Maybe love has more than one language. Maybe God does too. Murmurs in the council, not agreement, but uncertainty. Then another voice. Mrs. Henderson, the shopkeeper's wife. Sarah's mother delivered my baby, she said. Came walking up from town, still wearing her apron. Brought Emma into this world gentle when the doctor said she wouldn't survive. Let the woman's husband rest beside her gentle. Then Miss Jameson, the school teacher. Then old Mr. Patterson, who remembered my parents' wedding. Not many, but enough. Enough to make the sheriff pause, enough to divide the council. "This isn't over," Morrison said, but his voice wavered. Sheriff looked at me, really looked. Saw something that made him think. "We could arrest you," he said. "You could," I agreed. "Or I could choose not to dig up a man who loved his wife." "Not today," Morrison protested. "We have the law, and I have discretion." Sheriff said, "Firm now. Leave her be." They left, not happy, but leaving. I stood there shaking. Not from fear. From everything at once. Victory. Terror. Relief. Exhaustion. Thomas stood beside me, solid as the earth. "We did it," he said. "They'll be back," I whispered. Maybe, maybe not. But today, we won. We finished the burial, lowered my father next to my mother, sang the final prayers, covered them both with earth that held my whole history. When it was done, I couldn't move, couldn't think, could only feel that night. Everything caught up with me. We'd returned to the house, finished the burial, won. Somehow, against odds I didn't understand. But winning didn't feel like I'd imagined. It felt like standing on a cliff, wind howling, ground crumbling beneath my feet. "What have I done?" I said, to Thomas, to myself, to the walls that had never answered before. "You honored your parents." I challenged the whole town, broke their laws, made enemies. "They'll come back." Thomas, with real charges, real consequences. The fear flooded in then. All the scenarios I'd held back during 3 days of preparation, during the ceremony, during the confrontation. They'd arrest me, drag me to jail, find me everything I owned. Take the house, take the shop, drive me out. And Thomas, they'd hurt him too, for helping, for standing with me. I could lose everything. I whispered. Thomas sat across from me, steady as always. We could run, leave tonight, before they come back, start over somewhere else, take new names, just disappear. Is that what you want? His question made me stop, made me think. My parents had stayed, built life in hostile ground, loved despite every obstacle, raised me here, in this house, on this land, in this town that never fully welcomed them. They could have run too. Didn't. "Or you stay," Thomas said. "Stand your ground. Face what comes." That's also brave. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. You don't have to be strong alone. The words hung there. Promise. Possibility. Everything I'd wanted and been too scared to reach for. "If you stay," I said, voice breaking, "and they arrest me, hurt you, drive us both out, I couldn't bear it if you suffered for my choice." "It's my choice too," he said, leaned forward. "Let me make it." I'd spent 28 years building walls. Took 3 days with Thomas to knock them down. I was terrified of what lived behind those walls. Terrified it was just emptiness. Just shame. Just me. Small and scared and not enough. But looking at him, I saw myself reflected different. Saw someone worth standing beside, worth fighting for, worth choosing. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. Let someone in, trust someone, need someone. You're doing it now. I was, despite everything, despite fear, despite 28 years of practice at being alone, the breakdown came then. Not gentle, not pretty. Years of held grief pouring out. For my mother. For my father. For the child I'd been who learned too young that love meant loss. For all the times I'd denied myself to survive. For every moment I'd chosen silence over truth. Thomas held me. First time he'd touched me like that. Arms around me, solid and warm. He didn't shush me. Didn't tell me to stop. Just held while I broke. His heartbeat was steady against my cheek. Mine was thunder, storm, earthquake. His steadiness didn't calm mine. It held it. Let it rage. First time I didn't have to be calm to be safe. When I could breathe again. When the sobs turned to hiccups and then to silence. He said something I'd never heard before. I love you. Simple, clear, true. I loved you when I heard your story. Your mother's sister telling me about the niece she'd never met. The girl caught between worlds. I loved the idea of you. Now I know you. I love the reality even more. You don't know me, I said. Not really. You've only seen 3 days. I've seen you scared and brave at the same time. Seen you grieve and laugh and fight and surrender. Seen you honor your dead and claim your living. That's enough to love. That's more than enough. If they come for me, then they come for both of us. I'm not leaving. Sarah. Not unless you send me away. Dawn was coming. I could see it through the window. Gray light creeping across the mesa. And with it, I saw them. Riders. 6 of them. Council members. With shovels. Coming to finish what the sheriff stopped. Thomas saw them too. Stood. Looked at me. I could hide. Could run. Could choose peace over principle like I'd done my whole life. Or I could choose my father's daughter. My mother's daughter. Myself. I stood. Walked toward the door. Sarah, I'm done running, I said. Done hiding. Done choosing silence. I stepped off that porch into dawnlight, and everything after was just details. I made my choice the moment I stepped off that porch. Thomas beside me. Not in front. Beside. His presence amplifying my voice, not replacing it. The 6 council members rode up to my fence. Dismounted slow, Morrison in front, the others flanking him like soldiers, shovels glinting in dawnlight. We're here to correct this situation, Morrison said, voice hard, final. With or without the sheriff's permission, you're not touching my parents' graves, I said. We have majority council vote. We have the law on our side. Step aside. Sarah? No. He blinked, like he'd never heard the word from me before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe I'd spent so long saying yes, being agreeable, being invisible, that my no sounded like a foreign language. We'll arrest you for obstruction, then arrest me. I walked forward, stood between them and the cemetery gate. Dig if you must. Arrest me if you will. But you'll have to go through me first. Morrison looked at Thomas. And you're trespassing, corrupting. I'm standing with family, Thomas said, quiet as bedrock. Not trespassing, not corrupting. Standing, Morrison's face went red. This is Christian land. My parents are buried there. I said, cut through his anger with simple truth. My father, who you all knew, who ran a shop in this town for 40 years, who paid his taxes and kept his head down and loved a woman you couldn't accept. He's buried next to that woman now, the way he wanted, the way he deserved. You want to tear that apart. You want to be the men who dig up love because it made you uncomfortable. Silence, heavy as stone. Then hoofbeats, more riders coming. I braced for reinforcements, for this to get worse. But it was Reverend Walsh, Mrs. Henderson, Miss Jameson, Mr. Patterson, others, 10, 12 people. Not many, but enough. They lined up beside me. I won't watch this, Reverend Walsh said to Morrison. Won't bless it, won't condone it. They broke the law. Maybe the law's wrong, Mrs. Henderson said, sharp as tacks. Maybe some rules need breaking. Morrison looked at his counsel, at the people gathered, at me, standing my ground with my family beside me, and my conviction written on every line of my body. This sets a precedent. Good. I said, let it say love matters more than rules. Let it say people get to choose how to honor their dead. Let it say this town has room for everyone, not just the people who look like you. I didn't wait for his answer. Didn't wait for permission I'd never needed. I walked past them. Through the cemetery gate, knelt at my parents' graves. Thomas knelt beside me. I pulled sage from my pocket, Apache tradition, planted it in the earth. Then I pulled roses from my other pocket, white roses, my father's favorite, white tradition, planted them together, sage and roses, Apache and white. Mother and father, both parts of me. This is my home, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. They are my people, both of them, all of them. I'm done choosing which half of myself gets to exist. This ground holds my history, my blood, my love. I won't apologize for it, won't hide it, won't let anyone erase it. I looked at Morrison, at the council, at the people who'd come to watch. Dig if you must, but I won't move, and I won't be silent anymore. The moment stretched, taut as wire, ready to snap. Then Morrison lowered his shovel. This isn't over, he said, but his voice was defeated. Maybe it is. Reverend Walsh said, gentle but firm. Maybe it's time we let it be over. Morrison looked at his council. 3 of them lowered their shovels too, 3 against 3. Tied vote, no majority. We'll revisit this, do that. I said, take your time, talk it through. But my parents stay where they are, together, as they should be. Morrison mounted his horse, rode away, half the council with him, the others stayed, awkward and uncertain, until finally they left too. But the people who'd stood with me stayed. Reverend Walsh put his hand on my shoulder. Your father would be proud. My mother too, I said. They drifted away eventually, back to their lives, their shops, their ordinary mornings. I stayed kneeling, Thomas beside me, both of us crying now. Different tears than I'd ever cried before. Victory tears, relief tears, finally, myself tears. You did it, Thomas said. I looked at him, looked at the graves, looked at the sage and roses growing together in ground that held my whole history. We did it, I said. That we was new, was everything 6 months later. I stood in this same cemetery wearing a wedding dress. Not white, not Apache, both. White cotton with red and black beadwork. My mother's symbols worked into fabric my father would recognize. Worlds meeting, worlds merged. Thomas stood beside me in his best suit and Apache wedding shirt. Reverend Walsh in front of us, Apache Elder Thomas's uncle beside him. 2 ceremonies, 2 languages. 2 peoples coming together to witness what my parents started 30 years ago. Love that doesn't follow rules. The town didn't transform overnight after that dawn confrontation. Neither did I, but we changed enough. That was everything. Some people still crossed the street when they saw me. Some still whispered. Some still thought I should have bent. Should have given in. Should have chosen their version of peace. I didn't care anymore. I had Thomas. Had my parents' memory. Had myself, finally. Wholly. Completely. I visited the graves every Sunday, sang in Apache, prayed in English, brought sage and roses both. Balance, not perfection. Truth, not performance. Thomas stayed. Moved into town. Not into my house propriety still mattered some. Worked as a horse trainer. Built bridges between reservation and town. White and Apache. People who'd never talked, learning to listen. We courted properly, slowly, building foundation strong enough to last. We don't hide, I told him one night. We don't explain. We just are. Yes, he said, and kissed me like being himself was the easiest thing in the world. I reopened my father's shop, added Apache crafts beside white goods, beadwork and bullets, baskets and bacon. Sold to reservation and town both. Some customers left. New ones came. Balance, not popularity. When Thomas proposed, I said yes, but I keep my name, White Horse. It's who I am. He smiled. I know. That's who I love. So we stood at my parents' graves and married on ground that cost everything. Ground that held my mother's bones and my father's body and my roots, going down deep into hostile soil that grew things anyway. Hostile soil still grows things, still holds what matters. The ceremony was small. Representatives from both worlds. Reverend Walsh spoke about love crossing boundaries. Apache Elder blessed us in words my mother would have known. People from town and reservation both, sitting together, witnessing. Not everyone came, but enough came. Enough mattered. After. We had a meal at my house. Our house now. Coffee and fry bread. Conversation in 2 languages. Laughter that crossed every line anyone ever drew. I thought about my mother choosing love over easy belonging. About my father choosing her over his people's approval. About the courage it took to build life in the spaces between. I'd spent 28 years trying to be what everyone else needed. Took a burial to teach me to be what I needed. Took standing over my parents' graves to learn I didn't need permission to exist. Took Thomas to teach me love doesn't erase difference. It holds space for it. He doesn't make me more Apache or more white. He makes me more myself. That's the only math that matters. I learned that strength isn't standing alone. It's knowing when to stand together. I learned that belonging isn't about fitting in. It's about standing true. I learned that some battles are won with guns, some with words, some with simply refusing to move. My mother was Apache. My father was white. I am both. I am neither. I am exactly who I'm meant to be. They tried to dig him up. We stopped them. Not with violence, with presence. With truth. With the kind of love that doesn't bend to make others comfortable. The town still whispers, let them. I have Thomas. I have my parents' memory. I have myself. I have Sunday mornings at the cemetery, Planting flowers, Thomas beside me, hand on my shoulder, my hand over his. Planning our future. Both languages, both worlds, both of us. Whole. The burial became a battle. The battle became a beginning. And the beginning became a life worth fighting for. That's victory enough. That's everything.